All right, welcome back to this tutorial. In this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to learn about audio playback, and we're also going to add another feature on Minimaps to this game that we started a couple of lessons ago. So in the previous lessons, we first learned about terrain and then making a little game world and having a little character moving around the game. Then in the last lesson, we learned how to add scenes. We had learned how to do scene management so we can navigate from scene to scene to scene. So we learned a little bit more about UI in the last lesson. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add some music playback and sound effects. So what we're going to do is first we're going to add some music playback and sound effects to our project. There's a ton of free assets out there on the Unity asset store, but you still got to read the user agreements that each developer has posted for their particular musical and sound effect packages. Since we're doing an educational thing here, so we're just taking whatever is free and we're not really checking for that. But if you're publishing, you want to verify that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Unity Asset Store, and I have two packages here that we're going to bring in. I'll start with music, and so what you can do is you can search for music on the Unity Asset Store and bring in any package that you want that's free. I'm going to use this free game music collection because they actually have these are more demos for the larger packs that that they offer for a price. So I've already downloaded. I've already added it to my account, so I can go ahead and hit open in Unity. I'll just hit open Unity editor, and it should pop up. There it is. I've already downloaded. It's already cached on my hard drive, but you'd probably just click the download button first and let it download to your hard drive first. So I'm going to just go ahead and hit import. Let it import. And I'll just hit the import button down here. I'll just bring everything in and let it do its thing. All right, so it's been added. And what I'm going to do is look at my project folder for a second. And it's created a folder called Free Game Music Collection. What I'm going to do is actually organize this a bit better. So I'm going to click on Assets and add a folder called Audio. And within Audio, I'm just going to create a folder called Music. And also Sound Effects, or just SFX. Actually, it got made into a subfolder, so I want to move that outside of it. So I wanted to have music and sound effects for audio, and now I have this free game music collection folder. I'm just going to move it under music so it's just organized better. All right, so we've got our music in play. Now let's add our sound effects. So I'm going to go back to my asset store, and I've already got a package I've already added to my collection, and so I again just searched for sound effects and came up with this. Again, check the usage requirements or the user agreements before you put something like this into your final product. I'm just gonna hit open in Unity. I've already quote unquote purchased it, even though it's free. All right, so now it'll redirect to my Unity editor, free sound effects pack. I've already got it cached to my hard drive, so I don't have to hit the download button. So I'm just gonna hit import. Let it do its thing, and also hit import here. All right, so now that it's been added to my project here, you'll notice that there's a folder called free pack that it added. I'm just going to drag it under SFX. So everything's just nice and organized here. And now I can go ahead and start doing some work on this game and actually applying some musical playback to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with music. And if we click on the music folder and expand the free game music stuff, this particular developer has like action music, adventure music, apocalyptic, and sci-fi. And so what we'll do is we'll start inside the home scene. So it's nice to have like a nice background music to actually get your player hyped up and ready to start playing your game. So that's the idea behind it, is that you really want to entrance your user, and even the most basic music can actually go a long way in changing the dynamic of the game. And if you can do that, then you can imagine that a really nice soundtrack can actually really add to the ambiance of the game. So we'll start with the home screen here, or the home scene, and we'll pick out a couple of songs here. So I'm gonna just hit, actually we'll try this one. It's called Free Action Track 3. This is kind of like, all right, so you can tell it's pretty loud there. I'll just turn down the volume a bit. All right, we can try another one if you want. That kind of sounds like it's ready to hype you up. There's another one there. I might just stick to the action tracks today. So when you click on an audio track, you'll see that there's an option for previewing different songs here. All right, and so you have a little play button that you can click on in the inspector to get the preview and listen to the track. I'm gonna go with this first one called Free Action Track 1. But to be able to add music, we need an object called an audio source. So to add this component, you can add as many components as you want for audio source to your scene. You can have like different sounds or different music tracks or different sound effects or different, whatever, playing at different points in your game. I just want to have like a general background sound for every scene in our exercise today. And so I'm going to add it to main camera. So typically you might add your music you can just add it to any object in the system, but main camera is one of the common ones that you'll add it to. So I'll start by clicking on main camera, bring back my scene and actually leave game there like that. And so with main camera highlighted in the inspector, I just go to add component and I'll search for audio. All right, so audio source is what you're looking for. Let's click add, and you can see here when you scroll down an audio source, there's a lot of options here, and audio clip is what you want to use for choosing the sound that you want to play. Now in the editor it's pretty easy to work with. We're going to write this in code as well, so to be able to select a song and actually a sound effect at least and play it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first free action track and drag it over to audio clip. Now we have this button here, play on awake, so this means that play at the moment that you start loading the scene, but also below it is loop. So you want this to repeat over and over again for the user. You don't want your scene to go quiet after the song clip has played. So we'll check off loop as well. And now if I go to game and I run this thing, so you can see that we have like a nice theme going just to get your user entranced, excited, and ready to play. So that's it's really easy to add background music to Unity. So let's apply this to our other scenes. So I'll just stop playback there. So what I'll do is do a Control S to save here, and I'll switch over to my settings scene. So I'll go to my scenes, there's settings, so double click on that. All right, and so what you want to do in your scenes is try and have a consistent song going. You can have different songs, as long as they're like you come up with something tasteful. ideally, if if you're consistent, at least you maintain that thing. And consistency is what I always say whenever I'm teaching. So you should be consistent. In my exercise, I'm going to try a different song on purpose, just to show you your options out there. So what we're going to do first off, we're in our settings. I'm just going to hit main camera. I'm going to add a component. There's audio source. I'm just going to click on that. So I have audio source again, and we'll just choose a different song this time. Maybe I'll go with sci-fi, and we can hear a few sci-fi tracks at the same time. You know, that actually sounds all right. So making sure I'm on main camera, audio clip. Just gonna drag that over, and so now I have music playback for my settings scene. Now I'm gonna save this, and we'll just do a quick run, make sure that it works. Yep, so we have here our settings scene. It's playing some music as well, but I should check off the loop checkbox as well. And I'll just hit Control S to save. And I'm gonna switch over to game. Sorry, to our game scene, that is. Do the same thing. And under main camera, add a component, audio source, and just choose another song. I like the sci-fi motifs here, so I'm gonna try let's try a different sci-fi soundtrack. Yeah, it's kind of nice. So under main camera, audio source, I'm gonna drag this audio clip over and hit loop. All right, now you can look, if you look at the waves kind of give you an idea of what the sound might look like. So if you look at this one I have highlighted here, right, it's actually playing the song from start to finish. And the idea behind it, and the name kind of gives it away, is that there's the word loop. So what it does here is the performer has created this track in a way that when it reaches the end, if you were to restart from the beginning, it would seamlessly look like it'll continue playing. Whereas if you look at the track next to it, it's probably the exact same song, but at the end there's like nothing, right? There's silence for a bit, which kind of tells you that this track was not designed to be looped over and over and over again. All right, so you notice that I'm not picking ones like this, right? Because it'll come to an end and then it'll restart again with like an abruptness to it that might sound a bit clunky. So when you look at the soundtrack you're choosing, you can use the waveforms that are in the pictures here to kind of give you an idea of what the type of sound effect or sound is. All right, so we've got here main camera, we've got our free sci-fi chosen, loop is checked off. Let's get Control S to save the scene, hit play to run. All right, so in our game, we've got like a little, got some music going to help with the ambience of the game. All right, so that was pretty easy to do. It was pretty easy, pretty straightforward on how to add music. Now, adding sound effects, it requires some coding. All right, so first off, I'll start in the home scene again. So I'm going to switch back to home scene. And what I want to do is I want to start by setting it up so that all three buttons that I have here, when I click on them, will play a sound effect to indicate to the user that we actually clicked on something. All right. So to do that, we're going to have to write some code. All right. So now that we're in our home scene, we'll just open up Visual Studio. We already have a script open called Home Scene Manager, and we'll just continue to add to it. So if I go to scripts, I'll see Home Page Manager actually is what it's called. And you can see I have here Visual Studio open, ready to go. So what I want to do here is play my sound effects, and I'm going to use code to do it. So we talked about audio source. Audio source plays a sound effect, but to represent an audio clip or audio file itself that actually has the sound contents, we're going to need an object called audio clip. So I'm going to add a variable here called audio clip. I'm going to say public audio clip and call it click sound. All right, now we're going to add this to every time we click on to go to a new scene, but also in our panel too. So I might just start with enable auto panel, about panel, and so we need to. So when you want to play an audio clip, you have to play it through an audio source. We already have an audio source added to our main camera. Now our main camera is not associated with this script. I'd have to actually add a component to main camera to play for this homepage manager script so that we can actually access it. But there's a better way to do this. There's an easier way, and that is to use some of the find methods that exist inside GameObject. So I'm going to call GameObject.find, and you'll see there's a bunch of find methods here. I'm going to look for find GameObject with tag, and there are tags that you can tag your game objects with so for situations like this. Main camera is always tagged with main camera. It's just a standard thing in every scene, and I can show it to you afterwards. So find game object with tag main camera dot get component, and the component I'm looking for is audio source. All right, so when I get that component out of the main camera game object and it has a method called play one shot. Now this play one shot, there's play. So if I actually go back a second and say play, so there's play on awake. Well, really it's like play one shot. There's a couple other play methods, but play one shot's what I care about for sound effects. And so I want to play my click sound. All right. Now this should work perfectly fine for my for all intents and purposes, because the main camera is a pretty easy object to access when you're doing a find game object with tag for main camera. So I'm going to save this, and I'll switch back to my editor, and it's going to do a little bit of thinking. All right. So if I first point out to you main camera, the tag variable is right here where it says main camera, and you can actually change it to some other tag if you want, or you can add your own tags by going to add tag. But we're going to leave it as is. Main camera is the standard. We'll stick to what it is in our exercise here. What I want to do is I'll switch back to home scene manager, where we have our script home page manager from a previous exercise. And now we have a variable called click sound. Well, now I can actually go ahead and start adding sound effects. So we have the sound effects pack. So I'm going to click on sound effects pack, and I'm going to choose a sound effect that will go nicely with a click of a button. So, or actually, I don't even have to. I can just choose something that adds a little bit of flair to the game, since it is a game after all. It's like a sci-fi world anyway, so might as well go a little fancy here. So let's see what our options are. I mean, these guys have a heavy object impact. If I play that, sounds kind of explosive. Another heavy object. Tempting. There is Dragon Spitfire. Explosions. And there's my personal favorite, Indiana Jones Punch. Let's try Indiana Jones Punch. So going back to home scene manager, I'm just going to take Indiana Jones punch and drag it to click sound. There we go. Just gonna hit Control S to save. Let's run this scene now. If I click on About, you just heard the punch. So let's apply that to all our buttons. So I'm going to switch back to code. And I'm just going to copy and paste this line that we just added to my other event handlers. So I'm just going to copy, paste into the disable method, into the go to game method, and the go to settings method. All right, switch back to my editor and let it do its thinking. Hit run. Now we went to settings. It didn't, like the buttons, nothing, no sound effects. Now we have to apply this to our settings page. So now I'm going to switch over to settings, the settings scene that is, and I'm going to apply the exact same thing, but first I should also switch over to the settings scene script. Notice that we have a settings scene manager from last time. It has a settings scene manager script, so we're gonna work with that script as well again here. So I'm just gonna open that one up and do the exact same thing here. We're gonna say public audio clip. I'm gonna call it click sound again, and I'm going to, under my button, so I have here reset high score and I have go home. I'm going to apply it here again as well. So it was game object dot find game object with tag main camera dot get component audio source dot play one shot. Again, click sound. And I'm going to just copy that line and paste it into my other event handler. Go home and save it. So now we have audio clip. We have the same line of code applied to reset high score and go home. And I've saved the file. I'm going to switch back to my editor and let it do its thinking. And there we go. Now click sound is there. I'm going to use the exact same sound effect, Indiana Jones, just for consistency. And save it. Let's hit play to test the scene. If I hit reset high score, there we go. Hit back, and there we go. So now we want to apply this to the game. Now, with the game itself, the game world, I'm going to add a couple of other sound effects at the same time. So let's switch over to our game scene. And I'm going to switch over to the script. So Game Scene Manager is the script that we have been using to manage this game. So we're going to switch over to this script. All right. So now that we're inside Game Scene Manager's script file, what we're going to do is we're going to add not just one sound effect, we're going to add 4 into our into this scene. So I'm going to declare them here as variables. We'll start with public audio clip. Call it click sound. So again, we're going to still have our button click for quitting the game, but I also want to add public audio clip, and I'll call this score sound. All right, and I also want to have a game over sound. So public audio clip, call it game over sound. And finally, let's have a public audio clip explosion sound. So what we're going to do here is we'll have our click for our button click to quit the game. Every time we increment the score, we're going to have the score sound play. Whenever the game is over, we run out of time, we'll play the game over sound. And explosion sound is something I'll just throw in like every 4 seconds or so. We'll just hear some explosions going off in the background, make it sound like we're in a war zone. All right, so that's the idea behind it. Now we can get the click sound over with pretty quickly because it's been the same as before. In fact, I should still have it ready to go. So just pasting it from the last scene. So game object find game object with tag main camera, get component audio source, play one shot for click sound. In fact, I can continue using this line of code over and over again as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this inside my method where I'm counting down time, because it's a coroutine. Now if I scroll down, it's a coroutine that executes every second. So it actually continues every second, right? And we set it up last time so that every second it was decrementing our current time value, and every 5 seconds it was just incrementing score, because hey, you survived for 5 seconds, sure, even though there was really nobody attacking and killing them. And and there was also a possibility for a game over as well at the same time. So we'll start with adding a sound effect to incrementing our score. So we have here that every 5 seconds we're going to be incrementing score. Now of course you can have any application you want, but we're just going to have a sound effect play every time our score increments. So I'm just going to use that same line, game object, find game object with tag from main camera, get component audio source, play one shot. Now we're going to replace click sound with score sound. All right. So now every 5 seconds we'll hear our score updated. And at the same time, let's add in another mod statement here to say if current time mod, well, let's say 3 seconds, every 3 seconds equals 0, then we'll play a sound effect. This time it'll be the explosion sound. All right, so we got here our explosion sound. Now let's look for game over. And inside game over, we'll play our game over sound. So after we save our high score inside the game over method, we're going to play the game over sound. All right, so now we're inserting some sound effects at different points in our game world to add some effect or enhance the game experience. So we've added enough sound effects for now. Let's just save our file and let's switch back to our game world in our editor. And you'll see that Game Scene Manager is going to expand with these new variables in a moment once it's done thinking. So now click sound is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go back to my free pack under sound effects. I have my Indiana Jones punch that I'm going to reuse for click sound as I've used in the other 2 scenes. But now for score sound, we should find something to indicate that hey, we just scored. and you can play around with the different sounds in this in this pack, but I'm thinking something magical, right? So if I look under the magic category here, like there's magic simple spell swoosh, or electricity spell, a little long, magic spell coins. That actually makes sense because, I mean, we're not earning coins, but it sounds like we're gaining something. So I'm gonna use this magic spell coins 2 sound effect. So I'm gonna drag this over to score sound. I actually picked the wrong one. I'll get it right. There we go. Magic spell coins 2. Now for game over, we should pick something that indicates a game over sound. And there isn't really much in this package in particular that has something that could say like a game over sort of thing. So playing around with it, you can choose, like, there's monster bite on armor. Yes and no. I mean, I'm just going with it because it's sounds like a bad animal just caught up to you and just ate you. So go with that. All right, and then for explosion sound, there's a number of explosion sounds in this package, right? That you could play around with. There was one in particular that caught my ear, which was railgun. So I click on the railgun. So I'm gonna go with railgun for this example here. All right, so now let's save it, and I'm gonna start from the home scene now and run this. All right, so we have here different. All right, now if I just stay here, so we just heard an explosion, and we also heard our score increment. All right. Let's let it run to the end. 17 seconds left, so we'll just let the game wind down to 0. Now I didn't really put in a proper game over mechanism into here. Like you really want to have like a message that says game over. And you want to probably disable the ability to keep playing. And so there was that sound effect right there. It was actually really quick, really subtle. And sometimes sound effects can be subtle, which isn't a bad thing, but it subconsciously alerts your user that something happened. So if I click quit, there you go, you have the little punch there, and we're back at our game. So that essentially is our crash course on playing sound effects and playing music. But I don't want to end this game just yet, or end this tutorial just yet. What I want to do is I want to get into adding a mini map, a heads-up display for our game world. So I'm going to switch actually to my game scene. All right, and I want to add a little map right here to indicate where I am from a bird's eye view. And mini maps are very easy to add, very simple to add, and very convenient to add. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. All right, so adding a mini map camera is actually a pretty easy process to do. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a new camera, and I'm going to have this camera situated right above our cube, our player here. So if I'm going to expand cube there, you can see that we have player text and we have a follow camera to follow this cube everywhere it goes. I'm going to go to game object, go to camera, and add a new one. And I'm going to drag, well, first actually I'm going to rename this camera to be mini map camera. All right, And then I'm going to drag this camera to where follow camera is. And the positioning wise, I'm going to actually reset it to 0, 0, 0. Right? So it's actually at the same position as our cube. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise it a bit. So I'm going to first double click to bring it into view or into focus in our scene. I'm going to raise it. And I want to rotate it so it's facing down. So I'm going to set its Y to be like 11.15 because I've already played with some of these settings. I'm going to rotate its X to 90 degrees. So now it's a bird's eye view. You can see from the game view, it's a bird's eye view, and it's facing down upon the character. The problem is right now it's the camera in focus, but don't worry too much about it. We'll get it to be as a sub camera. So right now we have the camera in play. It's positioned to where I want it to be positioned. You could play around with field of view and all that sort of stuff to see what to see if you can get a really nice a view for it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something called a render texture. So what this does is it's a texture that is constantly rendering, and its main use is to be constantly rendering from a camera. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a render texture. I'm just going to go to my project folder, and since I already have a folder called textures, I'm just going to add a new render texture. All right, and I'm going to name this Mini Map Render Texture. And so I have this mini map render texture. Now if I click on mini map camera again, there is a texture, a target texture option here, and it's looking for a render texture. So I'm going to just drag this new mini map render texture file I just created and place it there. Now what I want to do is I want to add a raw image object to my UI. I'm going to place it in the bottom left corner here, and this raw image is going to serve to be broadcasting the target texture's value all the time, basically the camera's view all the time. So if I go to game object UI raw image, so now it's placed a white square in the center. I'm going to anchor it to the bottom right and hold down Alt on the keyboard. So there, it's in the bottom right. I actually want to increase the size of it because we have a lot of space here. So I'll go to my scale tool, and there it is. So go to my scale tool, let's just scale it up. And we'll have to re-anchor it to the bottom right. Or we might have to move it if it's not anchoring properly. I'm going by the game view there. So there we go. We now have a raw image in the bottom corner. All I have to do now is drag my mini map render texture to the texture of this raw image. So I'm going to go back to project. There's mini map render texture. Just drag it there. And there you go. If I go back to my game scene, there you go. Now you see the game's view, bird's eye view, in the bottom right corner. So let's run this scene. Just going to turn down the volume. All right, let's start moving around the game and keep your eye on my mini map render texture. And you can see my mini map is rendering and broadcasting the camera above into the corner. So this is very convenient for your users when you want to add a map to the game world to show them where you are in the game world, right? From a bird's eye view, they can see if they're gonna hit a dead end or whatnot, right? So you can see where you are. All right, so there you have it. In this tutorial, we focused heavily on sound effects, but we also and music playback, but we also added in the ability to add a mini map camera, a bird's eye view to our game. All right, so that's it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Until the next tutorial, take care and bye for now.